Burnout doesn't have to do with the amount of decisions you have to make or things you have to do. This is where you have the ability to be creative, to actually think in a different manner. One of those places I go in my mind was when my wife walked down the aisle at my wedding. That at certain points in the day, their heart would just, let's say this is a coherent state, their heart would just shoot up. More level-headed you can approach everything in your life with. Most people in the world think that burnout comes from doing too many things. But I'll tell you right now, it has nothing to do with the amount of things you're doing and everything to do with the energy in which you approach things. It has to do with your ability to actually regulate your nervous system and expand its capacity so that it doesn't get overwhelmed with the amount of things you have to do. It has to do with the way that you create order in your mind so that you can close loops so that it's not feeling overwhelmed and therefore going to fatigue. Overall, it has to do with your ability to get into a state of internal coherence, which we'll go into in a second, versus incoherence, so that you can create an internal state that is conducive to the effectiveness that you want to see in your life. Now, I think this is an incredibly important topic because all over the world, we're seeing very ambitious people work themselves into a burnout because they don't understand their nervous system. And what's even worse is that when they then go point at the problem being the wrong thing, they never actually get to fix the real problem. They never actually get to know what happens to create that burnout. And then they're stuck in this place of not wanting to do more because they fear burning out again, even though that ambitious drive within them or that desire in their heart is telling them that they're meant to expand. So I want to break it all down for you today. And I want to give you all of the tools required for you to be able to become the most effective person at whatever it is you want to do in this life. Because when you understand how to create an internal state and hold that internal state of being, execution at any level becomes easy. And when you start to have the awareness of when your nervous system is coming to that point of fatigue, and you understand why it's happening and have the tools to actually deal with it to expand its capacity, you become unstoppable. So let's get into it. The first thing that I want everyone to understand is the difference between a coherent and an incoherent state. Now, an easy way to look at this is when you're in an incoherent state, there's no order in the mind. You're in a fight or flight response. You have the monkey mind going, thinking of a million things at once. You're basically in a state of survival, which is not actually going to be conducive to you being effective at dealing with big tasks or being able to make decisions from the right place. This is when you're actually in the sympathetic nervous system. And it is going to be good for you when you're being chased by a lion or a tiger or a bear, but not when you're dealing with day-to-day things. So we have to be able to actually shift ourselves into what's called a coherent state. Now, a coherent state is when your mind, your heart, your hormones, everything is working in harmony together. And when this happens, you actually go into what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. This is where you have the ability to be creative, to actually think in a different manner and approach things in the most effective way with a clear mind and can therefore make decisions from the right place. Now, what's interesting is because such a small percentage of the world knows this, it's very easy for people to be triggered to go into what's called the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, because there's been no intentionality between expanding their capacity or tools on how to get back into the parasympathetic. So there's actually this great organization called the HeartMath Institute. And they actually did tests on people because they wanted to see how these reactions occurred, what happened in the body, what triggered them, and how to, of course, be able to shift people back into the coherent state that is conducive to living a good life, ultimately. And they had heart monitors on people, and they would actually see that at certain points in the day, their heart would just, let's say this is a coherent state, their heart would just shoot up to a very high incoherent state. And it would stay there for about 20, 30 minutes. And then it would go down to a new normal. It wouldn't go back into what was true coherence. And it would actually stay at that new level for as long as 12 hours. And what's interesting is when they went to the test subject and they said, hey, what happened right around here for the heart rate to initially shoot up? And he said, he looked at his log and he said, oh, it was just a very simple argument with my wife. It wasn't even anything big. It was just like a small irritation. So if something that small can set your heart rate off, your entire physiology changes, you go into fight or flight mode. And then not only do you stay there for a while, but even when you drop down, you don't go back to the true coherence that you're in. Just think about how many people are actually living in a state of incoherence. And this is hard on your nervous system. Like I said before, you won't have the ability to think clearly or make proper decisions from this state of being. So learning to become aware of when you are in that state is going to be important. Now, they actually even teach these techniques and tools to people who need to perform under pressure. So first responders are a big one. And I'll tell you right now, one of the first steps that you can take or tools that you can utilize to shift back into a coherent state is the breath. Long, deep inhales and long exhales into your heart center will actually signal to your body that you are in a safe place and that you can start to calm down. Now, if that's not doing it for you, you can go the extra step and close your eyes. If that's still not doing it, what they say is to actually have a few times in your back pocket of moments in your life where you were experiencing bliss, where you are happy and had the feelings of joy and love, and go to that place in your mind. And if you are sitting there doing deep breaths into the heart center, and then going to a place in your mind that was pure bliss, then your physiology will change, your heart rate will go down, and you will start to move into that coherent state. You know, I'll tell you right now, one that I tell everybody because it's such a great example. For me, one of those places I go in my mind was when my wife walked down the aisle at my wedding. Because when I go to that place in my mind, I can't not just feel those feelings of love and joy and gratitude. And it completely changes your state in an instant. So this is going to be one of the main tools that you need going forward to catch yourself when you're in the stressed or overwhelmed state, and just take even a minute to move yourself into a state of coherence before you move on with your tasks or decisions in the day. Now, there's a very important way to approach all of the tools that I'm going to give you. You know, you can understand how to get into a coherent state, but I think that even approaching your philosophy of life in a different way is going to really help you with integrating yourself, expanding your capacity, and being the most effective person that I know you want to be. And that big philosophy that I want to touch on is the way that you approach work in general. Now, a lot of people talk about a work-life balance, and I think it's important to talk about in this video here because as people take these tools and learn what they need to do to shift back into that coherent state, we're going to start thinking about, oh, when I'm working, I'm in one mode, and then, when I'm not working, I'm in another. Or do I need to give myself enough time out of work to be able to be as effective as I can in work? Rather than trying to find a balance between your work and your life and keeping them as separate things, I would say to think of your work in terms of a big part of your life. They're not separate. And so I think that proper integration is going to be important. Rather than work-life balance, integration of your work into your life. So, for example, rather than working really hard all week and being in this fight or flight mode all week, or just like pushing through, doing what you think you have to, rather than enjoying what you're actually doing in your day-to-day life, and then all just trying to get through to some point where you feel like you can relax. Going to a spa on the weekend or going on a vacation, I want you to start to try and first switch into coherence, and then find that enjoyment and find that pleasure in your work, and actually create an integration with your life where you don't have to be on or off, even in the middle of your workday. Maybe you can take a break, right? Maybe you can go for a walk. Maybe you can go to the gym and go in the sauna. There's this proper integration that happens when you treat your work as what it is, a huge part of your life, not a separate thing from your life. You can begin to work on all aspects to make them enjoyable and what you would want them to look and feel like. Now that we have that proper mental approach to work and life, and work being a big part of our life, I want to go into the next steps of how to properly integrate and expand our capacity. Now, I want to just even start with giving you a little image, because again, going back to what I started this video with, that burnout doesn't have to do with the amount of decisions you have to make or things you have to do. I want you to think of anyone who has a lot of decisions and stays in a calm state. For me, I often think of Barack Obama. I don't know why. He seemed like he had a very calm, genuine demeanor. And if you think of the amount of decisions he had to make and the things he had to do and the size of the decisions he had to make, the potential pressure or stress or the ability for him to fall into overwhelm with what his role required, you can very easily see this exact philosophy I'm sharing with you of how your internal state is actually what matters. And if you can create that internal state, then just like Barack Obama, people can come to you with 5 different questions. People can have all these things that they need from you. And if you're calm, you're not getting emotionally involved with what each of these decisions mean, and you're able to keep that level head throughout no matter what's going on, it's not going to be taxing on you. And this is the goal with what we're doing here. So going forward with this idea of integration and this image of creating that internal state that you can hold, I want you to start in your day creating moments that you can actually go within and create that internal state. Even if you're not stressed out, properly taking care of yourself and being aware of your energy and doing what you need to in your day to make sure that your energy is where it needs to be. Prioritizing your own health and your well-being throughout the day is going to be one of the most important things that you do. Having that little check-in, where is my energy? Where are my stress levels? Do I need to take some time to breathe? Do I need to take a walk or go to the sauna at the gym like I was saying before? And then coming back into the rest of your day with that energy that is more ideal for the kind of outcomes or the way that you would want to approach everything that matters. Now, what a lot of people will do when they have a lot on their plate is, without realizing it, they'll fall into that fight or flight and they'll actually start to ignore the very things that they need to lean into more, which is time in the gym, time with themselves, meditation, morning walks, going in the sauna, whatever it is that allows you to fill your cup up. They feel like they don't have time, and so they cut out the things that they need to lean into. What they don't realize is this is actually making them far less effective as a person, and they fall into that state that will eventually have them come to a full point of fatigue and can take them out of the game entirely if they don't start to manage this correctly. So making sure that you have that proper integration where you're taking care of yourself, doing those tasks, filling your day with things that fill your cup and bring you joy, even when it's busy, is going to be very important to be able to create and hold that optimal internal state. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on with this is going to be very important, because most people don't realize they're doing this, and it's going to be, again, one of the big reasons why they can lead themselves to overwhelm, burnout, fatigue. And this is the open loops they have in their mind. Most people are sitting in resistance or a ton of unmade decisions. And this actually takes a massive amount of your energy or brain power without you even realizing it. So let's use the example of you want to do a webinar in your business and you like the idea and it sounds good, but there's a little bit of resistance or there's some questions that you need answered. Rather than making a decision to actually face the questions that need to be answered, or making a decision in general, right? Getting a time in the calendar, naming it, and starting to work on the content for that, which even just the initial decisions for that can be as short as 5 minutes. Approaching the material and everything can be 30 minutes, an hour. But even if you make the proper decision, you can put the time block in your calendar, then you've closed the loop and you're moving forward on what needs to happen for that to be fulfilled. Most people don't close the loop. So they say, I'm going to do a webinar, or I want to do a webinar, but I have all these other things and I'm not going to make the decision right now. Well, let's do that. And what they do is they kind of shove it to the back burner. Now, subconsciously, what happens when you do that is you basically shove it to another place in your mind and you tell your nervous system and your subconscious mind, hold this. I want to come back to this. And it just starts taking energy without you even realizing it. And the amount of unmade decisions that you have in all these different areas of your life is draining you without you realizing it. So what's important is to get in the habit, actually create the pattern in your mind to close the loop. Whenever you're facing a decision, do whatever's required for you to to close that loop. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do all of the fulfillment at that point in time. If it's something very quick that requires under 5 minutes to finish it, I would say do it. Otherwise, do whatever's required for the next step of fulfillment. Like I said, time blocking before is a great way to actually take the next step and know that it is dealt with. That's not sitting in the back burner anymore. It's actually put on a calendar where you know you're not going to have to worry about it until that time block comes up. And this can happen with so many other things in your life. Closing all these loops in your mind will allow you to have order in your mind. And the more order that you can create, the more simple things feel and therefore become, the easier it is to be calm, and the more level-headed you can approach everything in your life with. Now, we're really just scratching the surface here, but I wanted to give you as much information and tools and tips as possible for you to start taking this and running with it. In our business, we see people's capacity expand infinitely all the time because we help entrepreneurs become the person that can naturally produce the results that they desire. We believe that doing things in a peaceful state of mind is so important to actually have a good life. Because remember, work is a part of your life. It is not separate from it. And the more you can treat it as such, and the more you can take care of yourself and do the enjoyable things you need to throughout the day to fill your cup and regulate your nervous system, the more you're going to enjoy all of it and be better at it along the way. So if you liked this episode, hit subscribe, hit like, feel free to drop a comment below. If you're interested in working with our company to become the most effective version of yourself, follow me on Instagram and shoot us a message there, and I will see you guys in the next one.